So I'm excited to introduce Celestine. She is a STEM enthusiast. She is a 17-year-old senior in high school right now, and she is driven by her conviction to use science to further progress. Her project, Affordable Non-Invasive Continuous Blood Glucose Concentration Monitoring Using Thermal Technology, has won the Virgin Galactic Award in the 2019 Google Science Fair. Cool. So, hi, Celestine. So, welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining. So, wow, like even just reading the project is a challenge. So, it's super exciting to have you on this show. And this podcast and this interview series is really to feature young rising stars in the STEM field that is making waves at such a young age. And so you are certainly fitting that profile. And so maybe to get started, Celestine, like share with us your journey that led you to where you are today.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm really passionate about research and specifically like making medical devices and things that generally further healthcare. So around the end of freshman year, I began working on a device that essentially measures blood glucose levels without the need to withdraw blood. So that's basically like a monitoring device for diabetics, and I submitted that to the Google Science Fair. And I won the Virgin Galactic Award at Google. And then, so currently I'm just working on further clinical trials and getting a patent and so on. And it's really led me to a lot of really interesting pathways. And yeah, I'm really excited to see where research takes me next.
Amazing. So, well, at 17-year-old, and you have done this for 4 years now, since seems like you started this discovery, this project in freshman year. And so it's not exactly something that a teenager, a regular, when we think about a teenager, it's not exactly something regular, right? You make it sound very easy and so very, of course I'm doing this. So tell me more about, how is Leslie growing up? Like, have you always been interested in medical devices? What influenced you to pursue this passion?
Yeah, actually, to answer your question, I think a lot of young scientists have been interested in science from a young age. Well, that was not really the case with me. So, growing up, I think I definitely had a lot of different interests. Like up until I was 14, I think I took on every day with a different dream career in mind. I would wake up one day and want to be a vet, and the next day I'd want to be a doctor, and the next day I'd want to be a fashion designer and teacher, and so on and so forth. But just to kind of lay out a timeline here, I think as a child, I was very interested in reading and literature and linguistics. Those are things that I'm still very interested in nowadays. And then I think they started to solidify around middle school. So I got interested in health, but I wasn't sure exactly where. So I initially wanted to attend medical school, and then I became interested in public health, public policy, and kind of history. So like that would be like the intersection of humanities and healthcare ish. And then I got into engineering and healthcare and medical devices, and that's where we are right now. Yeah.
Wow. So from linguistics to medical devices and combining humanities, and that's such a wide range of interests that you have. And I think that's also seems like a lot of inventors, a lot of creators have this in common where their interests are quite broad. They're very curious people and wanted to understand the world and express themselves through that. And so when you like what made you suddenly decide, or like what made you eventually decide that okay, this is it, like this path is what I'm interested in?
Yeah, so I think there are definitely a lot of interlinked things between all of my different paths and all of my different passions. So I think it's really important to, maintain your broad range of interests because I think, interdisciplinary research and exploration is really, really important if we want to further progress in the world because it's really important to just kind of take the mindset in one field and apply it onto another or just kind of like intermingle two fields together and seek the intersection between those to find completely new and novel discoveries. I think it's really interesting to just kind of fuse different fields together and see what comes out of it. But I think I specifically kind of centered around biomedical engineering, um, just simply because I really enjoyed it. I think like it was kind of two things. Like I think through biomedical engineering, I kind of found my greater purpose within life. I mean, I don't know because to be fair, I maintain that I'm young, but as of now, I do feel like I am really, really dedicated to, furthering healthcare through science currently. And I really enjoy science. I really love discovering things and finding little nitpicks that kind of help us progress a little bit day by day and kind of shaping our future. I find that really, really exciting.
That's awesome. And so, as you're pursuing this journey of science and research, is there anyone in your life that inspired you? Is it a teacher or like a family member? Tell us more about that.
Yeah, definitely. I think growing up, my family has been they've been very accommodating. So I think like they've always encouraged me to explore a wide range of different interests, like whatever I'm into. My family has always been just like seize the moment, carry on. If I had to name one really, really influential figure in my life, that would be my maternal grandmother, who I think is a really interesting person. And although she doesn't, even though she's not a scientist and there are actually like no scientists in my family or anyone in a STEM background, I think she has an outlook in life that's really positive and really interesting and very, I think it's really important for me to keep emulating that. I think teachers are also an important influence in my life. There are a couple of teachers throughout my education that have shaped me to who I am today, and of course, the friends surrounding me.
Awesome. Yeah, grandparents are the best. And I love that you highlighted the positive attitude, right? Where being a scientist, a lot of it is going through rounds and rounds of failed experiments, and having that positive attitude, having that resilience is really key. And I'm super happy that you highlighted that part where a lot of people sometimes look overlook. And so you mentioned that in one of the interviews you mentioned that your two passions are social activism and research. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I think social activism was just like an umbrella term that I used. I think to kind of get into that further, I'm really passionate about using research to further eliminate social inequities. So the whole idea behind my diabetic monitor was just kind of figure out um, to figure out more accessible ways of glucose monitoring for people in my community, because I think in healthcare, aside from all of the empirical factors, there are a lot of social and cultural and very human influences that we need to consider. I think it's really important to kind of see what we can do and dedicate the good we can do towards this world for the people surrounding me. Again, growing up, the people around me in my community have greatly shaped the person that I am today, and I think research is ultimately a form of social responsibility for me. It's my way
Amazing.
of giving back. So.
Yeah, that's really well put, and it kind of ties back to what you were saying earlier about the interdisciplinary nature that is increasingly needed, right? Like science is different in every country, every part of the world, and how it's applied in different culture and societies. So this is a great segue into your creation, right? So the glucometer that you created is non-invasive and continuous. So for a layman like myself, like how would you describe how this works?
Yeah, definitely. So I basically utilized a couple of properties of heat and light and basically measured these subtle differences in temperature and luminosity upon human contact that kind of links into how much blood glucose is in the blood, how much glucose is in the blood. And yeah, so I basically utilized like these physical properties and built a prototype. So that's a medical device prototype with a couple of spare robotics parts. So yeah, I did this project independently. So I didn't have like any lab So this was originally kind of just a little creative project, and I would have never guessed that it would have gotten to the point where it is.
Wow. And so you mentioned that you didn't have a lab. So where did the experiments happen? Is that in your home or?
Yeah, so the original prototype I created at my house. I'm really lucky enough to have very good facilities in my school. So if I needed something, I would borrow something from the technology department or from the science department, well, physics department of my school. And, they were very accommodating as well. And I had access to like a 3D printer and a laser cutter in my school, which helped me a lot with all the spare parts.
Amazing. So this device is non-invasive. So how does it work or how does it look like? Describe to us. Is it something that you can wear or like a patch that you can stick on your skin?
Well, yeah. So currently, what I'm actually doing is I'm developing it so that it's going to be smaller. I think a lot of devices, I think with a lot of devices, that's like a pretty major problem and a pretty major area of development before it's commercialized. So currently, I'm working on a new prototype and I'm envisioning that it's going to be in the form of a ring so that people can easily wear it everywhere and it's accessible when people are doing certain activities and whatnot. And that glucose monitoring doesn't interfere with your daily way of life.
Amazing. And yeah, I actually wear this ring. I don't know if I can see here. It's called the Aura ring, and it monitors, it doesn't monitor my glucose, but it monitors my heart rate, my sleep pattern, like REM sleep, stuff like that. It would be awesome to have that glucose measuring somewhere, also as a form of a ring as well. So tell us more about, the topic of diabetes, right? So you mentioned that, oh, growing up, you have a lot of diverse interests. You thought about being a fashion designer and as a doctor, a vet, and you narrowed down into the medical device and research field, right? And what about diabetes? Like, so there's so many things you can research in the medical and biomedical field. What made you interested in the specific topic of diabetes?
So back in the summer of my freshman year, I shadowed a hospital and very shortly where I basically met a bunch of diabetic people with preventable complications. And from there, and from a couple of conversations, I basically learned that a lot of preventable death due to diabetes in Indonesia was a result of a cultural aversion. So there's like this collective societal aversion towards needles and injections because of a couple of intertwined cultural factors, whether it's like superstitions or religious reasons or, a reliance towards traditional medicine in more rural areas, or whether it's like a fear of complex medical devices like the current means of blood glucose monitoring we have, which requires you to withdraw blood and basically stab this needle into yourself over 10 times a day sometimes. So, I think with all those factors, a lot of people just avoid monitoring their blood glucose levels here. And there are a lot of preventable complications as a result. And basically, after hearing that, I decided that, conventional scientific methods or going into medicine and practicing medicine was just like not gonna cut it for what I wanted to achieve, for the change that I wanted to achieve. Just sticking to conventional textbook science was just not gonna cut it anymore. I wanted something bolder, I suppose. I wanted something that perhaps could make a substantial difference. And to do that, I had to pick a vastly different pathway to what we have currently. And that's kind of how I stumbled into my love for biomedical engineering. It's basically the perfect intersection of a very futuristic realm of technology and a very grounded societal understanding for me. So it's a really good crossroads between technology and social understanding for me.
Yeah, and it ties back to what you were saying about the specific social and cultural norms that affect how science can be applied. And even though there's other ways to measure blood glucose levels, like that might not be acceptable or accessible for certain parts of the world. And you being in Indonesia and seeing that culture, being in part of that culture, you have that unique understanding and perspective of how this science is can be improved or can needs to be improved to serve the people in
Mhm.
your country. And so you mentioned that, you didn't have a lab officially, and you were doing like you had a lot of support from your school and the tech department, and a lot of it is happening in at your homegrown lab. So
Mhm.
walk us through the process a bit more. Like, I'm sure it's pretty, like, it's a whole invention. So there must be some like failed experiments along the way. What did you test out that didn't work? And, what was the process look like?
Oh yeah, definitely. So I had like dozens of, I'd say like a dozen failed experiments before I came up with my first working prototype. I tried out a bunch of different methods. I tried out a method called iontophoresis, which is basically extracting glucose molecules across the skin, and that didn't work because I didn't have the right materials for that. I tried out basically creating my own ultrasound at home, which also did not work out. I tried a couple of different varieties of things. I tried out adding and removing certain implementations, which didn't work out. So it was a rocky road, but I think, throughout the research process, I generally enjoyed and loved what I did. So I really did not mind the failures at all. And yeah, there were certainly times when I wanted to give up, scrap the idea, and just start over with a new medical device all over again. There were times that I put the project aside for a week or two and just like returned to it afterwards. But I think towards the end, my heart was too much into the project to just leave.
Love that. And how long did it take from the start to, I guess, like the point that you feel comfortable and feel ready to apply to or participate in the Google Science Fair?
Yeah, so I started the project in around, I want to say July, June of 2018, and I submitted to the Google Science Fair in December. So that was half a year, 6 months. Yeah.
Awesome. So throughout that 6 months, it was a lot of trial and error, and got to a point where, okay, this is a prototype that I'm ready to show it to the world.
Mhm.
So how was it like participating at the Google Science Fair? Can you share some most memorial thing you've experienced there? What was some like awesome memories?
Yeah, the Google Science Fair was like incredible. It was generally like a super eye-opening experience. It was my first major science fair, and it was the first time where I was exposed to so many brilliant people, so many peers who shared a very similar vision of the future to me. And I think just like if I had to like compose a supercut of all the amazing experiences of the Google Science Fair, it would be, visiting the bowling alley from really, really like innocuous moments from visiting the bowling alley in Google to meeting people, like Turing Award winners, which is basically like the computer science Nobel Prize. And I think if there's one thing that the Google Science Fair taught me, it's that aside from all the awards and accolades, the true sense of learning really happens in the collective probing and sharing of ideas. And I found that within myself and all the finalists. And it was really special because there was only a few of us in comparison to like other science fairs that I attended, which are like large and had hundreds, sometimes thousands of students. So we formed like a really nice tight knit community, some of whom I still talk to today.
Great. Yeah, and I feel like having that global network of people who are making a difference with science is very special, right? Like, you guys are still super young and like start like, not even in university yet, a lot of you. And so following each other and learning from each other's creation is must be super inspiring. So
Mhm.
as part of this award that you won, you had a tour of the Virgin Galactic facilities and met engineers that are building the spaceship fleet. How was it like?
Oh, okay. So I was gonna go this summer, but that unfortunately got canceled because of the coronavirus pandemic.
So not yet.
Yeah, not yet, but I'm sure it's gonna be fantastic when the coronavirus pandemic calms down.
Yeah, yeah. And so you gave a TED talk earlier, I think it's just a couple months ago, about, was it last year or a couple months ago?
A couple months ago, yeah.
Cool. So that was the topic was don't be afraid to be young and stupid. So can you share more about how you handle being young and as a young inventor? And flip it around and make it your advantage.
Yeah, definitely. I think I've always seen it as an advantage because, on the one hand, you're very inexperienced, you're very new to the world, and you don't know that much. But in that same sense, you're kind of a blank slate and you can kind of shape yourself and mold yourself into who you want to be. You can surround yourself with the right people to kind of form your perspectives. And you're at the stage where you're very open to change. And that's really, really interesting to experience a lot of things for the first time. I think being young as well constitutes more creativity and a fresher and newer perspective on a lot of the world's problems, which may lead to more unique and novel solutions.
Yeah.
Delivering that TED Talk was a lot of fun. It was very, very new to me. I was really, really nervous, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that creating something and inventing new technology, new ways of solving problem is there's not really an age limit or a minimum age for that. And so sometimes even having that blank slate and having that, not having the baggage of like, oh, this used to work and let's build on that and kind of starting from scratch is actually a huge advantage. So tell us a bit about building the glucometer. What are some of the things that you learned from building this project that you didn't expect?
Right. Just like in engineering projects and devices, I think a lot of the biggest surprises for me were very technical things. And they were kind of things like how reliant every single component was on each other. And, when one thing breaks, everything just kind of falls apart. So you need this precision and accuracy and really relentless determination if you want to enter engineering technology.
Yeah, absolutely. And so how is it like since the Google Science Fair? Are you still building up on this project and this device? And you mentioned that you're making it smaller now. Like, are you working with a team or a company to commercialize this? Tell us more what's been happening since the science fair.
Yeah, so since this science fair, I was invited to the Department of Health in Indonesia, and that was a really exciting experience to talk to the Department of Health and just discuss potential collaboration. I have also filed a patent, so hopefully this is a step closer towards making the device more commercially viable and, of course, conducting further research and clinical trials. I've also been building other medical devices and conducting other research, which has been really interesting for me to just kind of explore all of these different areas, both within and outside of biomedical engineering. So this summer, I attended a summer program at MIT called the Research Science Institute, where I did research on artificial intelligence and linguistics in medicine. So that was like very different to what I'm accustomed to, but all the same, a lot of fun.
Wow. So you actually went all the way to Boston for a program.
No, I did not, sadly. It was virtual. I was really, really looking forward to going to Boston. But I think either way, once again, I found a really tight-knit sense of community within the people I met in the summer program who, some of whom are generally like some of my closest friends right now. And yeah, I love them to pieces. They're very brilliant people.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I feel like, now, if anything that the coronavirus taught us is that like even on a virtual setting, we can build really strong relationships and learn a lot from virtual programs as well. So yeah, I'm glad you still went ahead with it. And I'm sure in a couple of months or year, like maybe I'll read about the new thing that you're inventing and developing. So tell us a bit more about, Celestine as a high school student, right? Like, what do you do for fun? Like, what is your favorite book or videos that you follow?
Yeah, so what I do for fun, I love reading. So I read a lot of like short story anthologies and speculative fiction and stuff. So I can't pick one specific book, but my top three would be like The Chrysalids, Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro, and Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And then other things, I like playing video games, so that would be like The Sims, Animal Crossing, Stardew Valley, and I don't know whether this counts, but like Among Us has been
Oh,
like
yeah, it's really
it's
fun.
yeah, Among Us. But I have like a 1% win rate as imposter, but let's like yeah. I love figure skating, so I follow a lot of figure skating. So there hasn't been a lot recently because of the coronavirus pandemic, but I really, really love kind of artistic following kind of artistic sports like figure skating and rhythmic gymnastics.
Wow. So definitely following the theme of having very diverse interests
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
different things. So what kind of advice would you, let's say, give to someone in your shoes? Let's say 5 years ago, the Celestine that hasn't started this journey yet. Like, what advice would you give to her?
Oh God, that's a really interesting question. I have a lot of advice I would give to myself 5 years ago. But if I had to pick one, I think, think with a more future-oriented mindset. I think that's something that's really helped me. What do you want to be 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now? And I think another piece of advice that I would give to myself is to collaborate more, look for different perspectives around you, and listen to people, be more open-minded.
Awesome. So speaking of future oriented and thinking forward, right? So what's next for you? Like what are like you're senior now, like are you planning on going to college? If so, what are some of your majors that you would want to do? And just in general, like what are some things that you're plotting next?
Yes, so I am planning on attending a 4-year university. I do not know where my round of college applications will take me, but major-wise, I am applying as a biomedical engineering major and a potential minor in computer science and linguistics. So I think on the books for me would definitely be more research in, an actual lab and surrounded by top-notch facility and faculties and meeting more like-minded people, learning a more diverse range of classes, and generally just like fostering my intellectual curiosity and knowledge more.
Yeah, well, with your experience, like even with a homegrown lab, you're able to achieve so much. I just can't imagine, what would you get up to with a actual lab and also with everyone that you can surround yourself with in the top-notch university. So, well, Celestine, like so nice to have you on the show, and I've learned so much about your journey. And for the audience that are listening and watching this interview, how can they connect with you? Where do you hang out on the internet?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm on Instagram at Celestine Wenardy. I'm also on Twitter at Cel Wenardy, even though I have 10 followers. So, please come follow me because I have like nothing on there. Yeah, or you can send me an email, which is linked in my Instagram, and I'll definitely be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining the show. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, Michelle.